A recording of today's webinar will be available after the live discussions, which you can access on either our website at atc.ng or at the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria website. To ask our panelists a question, you can type your question by using the Q&A icon available to you at the bottom of your screen. And I'd like to also encourage you to share your key light bulb moments that you get during the webinar on your social media handles using the hashtag #ATCPowerWebinar or just simply the way forward. And for those of you just joining us, I want to welcome you. It is my pleasure to introduce to you our distinguished guest panelists in no particular order. First, I'd like to introduce Habiba Ali. Habiba is a pioneer in the renewable energies field. She's the founder, managing director, and CEO of Sosei Renewable Energies, which is an innovative company that brings reliable and affordable renewable energy, the products to those in Nigeria who need it most. Her sustainable energy solutions provide communities with unforeseen economic growth, increased capacity, and the potential for greater business development. Habiba is the Vice President of the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria and serves as a member of the Global Alliance for Clean Cook Stoves, the Nigerian Alliance for Clean Cook Stoves, and the Nigerian Energy Network. And also we have with us today, Femi Adeyemo. Femi is an entrepreneur with flair for disruptive innovations. He founded arnergy, a distributed utility leveraging Internet of Things to provide affordable and reliable electricity to small and medium businesses in Nigeria and emerging markets. Femi has a versatile experience gained across a variety of sectors, and he is particularly skilled at coordinating the deployment and operation of large-scale infrastructure projects, ranging from solar energy type to telecommunications. And he has provided solutions to multinational companies across Africa, Europe, South America, the Caribbean, and the Middle East. To start off the discussions, I would like to ask Femi to lead off by sharing his thoughts on the webinar topic. Femi, you may now take us through the slides that you have, if you have any. I'm sure David will be able to give you the permission to share.
And good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon from Lagos. I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
All right, very good. Thank you for the introduction. I don't need to reintroduce myself. Very interesting topic we have this evening, closing Nigeria's energy access gap by 2030. So let's examine this. How is this achievable? How is this feasible in the context of our nation? I think the government has put forward, as it is already captured in the Nigerian National Renewable Energy Policy, and it was captioned as Vision 2030, and the caption is Vision 30-30-30. And what does that mean? It means that by year 2030, we should have 10 as a nation, and then 30% of that should be renewable. So I try to break that down. So I think the first one is clear by year 2030. Yeah. So 30 gigawatts, where are we today? As a nation, we have installed capacity of about 12 gigawatts, but we've struggled as a nation to get above 4 gigawatts. Most people know that figure by the megawatts, so it's 4,000 megawatts. And there has been instances where, I mean, the 4,000 has been reduced to maybe 3, maybe even less than 3 or 2. And there has been instances of complete total outage, but I will get to that later. So again, Vision 30-30-30, which is by year 2030, have 30 gigawatts of capacity of installed and generated, and we should be able to distribute 30 gigawatt by year 2030. Sorry about this, that's 2030. And 30% of that should be renewable. So what's 30% of 30 gigawatts? We're talking of gigawatts should be renewable. So what that means invariably is in the next 10 years from today, as a nation, we want to, from only renewable, have about 250x, since we are at 4 gigawatts today. So we want more than 200% increase to be renewable. Where are we even on renewable today? I can tell you that we don't, as much as we lack data in this country, if we are close to 10% of this, which is 90 megawatts, we will have a significant, you will see solar panels almost everywhere. I know that the government has been trying to do a lot in this regard in recent time, especially the new leadership, the leadership, really, the previous and the new leadership of the Rural Electrification Agency, with the support of the Ministry of Power and the initiative and the Nigeria Energy Project, which is financed by the World Bank. I think that we've seen pent-up demand, and there has been increase in awareness and even deployments. But of course, we need more of that, because if I break that down, it has largely three section or 3 components, as they put it. And it's largely the energizing education, which has the largest component based on energy that will be deployed. And that will cover about 37 universities and teaching hospitals. And from the data that is available, even that project will not give us 1%, which is 90 megawatts out of the 9 gigawatts. So what that tells us is, as much as government is trying all they could, if with $350 million of debt, we might not have up to 10% of what the Vision 3030 is. What that tells us is we need to look at how to attract as much private capital as possible. And of course, it's good to know, and it's interesting to tell the audience that there has been a lot of interest from foreign investors, a mix of private equity players, impact investors, and even DFIs of several European and even some North American government-owned financial institutions, the DFIs, that have been looking at participating in Nigeria's energy crisis. Because of course, I don't want to go over, how much deficit we'll have. I know Abiba will do justice to that. But likely what I'm trying to pass across here is the vision is a lofty one. However, I'm part of this generation, and as much as possible, I don't want it to be said that Femi Adeyemo was part of this sector and a Vision 30-30-30, even though it was the government that set it, the private sector sector did nothing about it. We had Vision 2020 as a nation. I mean, people that set it thought 2020 won't come, but lo and behold, here we are in 2020. So yes, that's the vision. And how can we close this gap? So I've mentioned what the government is trying to do. Very fantastic, $350 million loan from the World Bank. It's unprecedented what the Ministry of Power is trying to do with the Rural Electrification Agency. I think on the execution, the team we have today up there, and it comes to execution, if you compare to what that agency has seen in the last 1 or 2 decades. However, again, based on the targets, we're still very far away, and that means we need to excite the private sector as much as possible to be able to get this, to be able to attain this vision. And what is my approach to getting this, to achieving this? Should it be so when you look at what we have achieved or how much capacity we have as a nation, we've had 4 gigawatts, as I mentioned. Most of our energy generation sources today, they're centralized. And centralized means that you have the Kanji Dam, you have the Hagman, and you still need to build the transmission grid, which is the bottleneck that we have today. Even if we generate today 4,000 megawatts becomes 15,000 megawatts tomorrow. It's been proven that the transmission grid is not ready to take that much power. And what might eventually happen is, even if we increase capacity on the centralized system, we might still have instances where the transmission grid would collapse and the whole nation will be in the dark. So as much as we want to achieve Vision 30, yeah, even though the government has said 30% should be renewable, which is 9 gigawatts, for us to close the gap, I believe that the government, apart from even the 9 gigawatts that should come from renewable, should be thinking on executing a larger percentage of that 30 gigawatts using decentralized form of energy, renewable or what have you. And this is what we believe it should look like. Of course, I wish this picture is from Nigeria, but we're not there yet. We're getting there. This is not Nigeria, but we believe that for that gap to close, it has to be decentralized systems. It has to be, I mean, rooftop deployment has to take a significant portion of that. I mean, we have several countries, Australia, I mean, is one, even, I mean, US, the state of California in America, had a lot of solar deployments. And with these, you are building a resilient energy ecosystem, because this is not a source of failure that we've experienced with our transmission sector before. And for this to happen, really, most of the countries where this happened, it didn't just happen by chance. It happened because the governments were intentional. I don't know how many more minutes I have. This is 16 minutes past. So please feel free to send me maybe a chat if I'm...
You have a couple of more minutes. You can go ahead.
Okay, all right. All right, so so like I mentioned, this is not happenstance. It didn't just happen. It was a product of well thought out policy, which had a lot of input even from the private sector, right? So in countries that this has really taken off, there has been a mix of incentives from the government, either in form of tax rebates, tax rebates, tax holidays. I mean, as a nation today, we're still having to pay VAT on solar input or on solar imports. I mean, we were really serious of 9,000 megawatts in the next 10 years. Today, we should have 0% VAT, as some even smaller African countries are already having such. There should be more or less a free entry of solar equipment, solar plus storage equipment into the country. Of course, I mean, we want, I mean, the best quality. We're not saying that the government should open the door and adulterated products should come in at 0% VAT. Those are part of what government can do to incentivize even the investors. Because one thing with the investors is even if we have those investors, right? Even if we have the investors, I mean, largely are foreign investors, and they have a choice of where they take the money to. So I asked myself, if I was the investor and there is a nation, just a neighbor to Nigeria with almost maybe, even if it is 30, 40% of the opportunity, but they provide an eliminated environment, I mean, the capital might go there versus staying in Nigeria. So yes, the picture I showed earlier, that's where I wish we get to as a nation, but I can tell you that it's already happening and it is private sector led. So the picture I have here, I mean, you can see my cursor. You can see this is in Lekki, Lagos, Lekki Phase 1 in Lagos. You could see 2 solar panels on the roof. I'm sure you can see my cursor. That's 2 solar panels there. I mean, either we like it or not, that's energy access. That is closing the energy access. If there is no grid and if there is no generator, no matter how small, these 2 solar panels on that roof will power lighting. It will charge mobile phone, and it might even be able to power a few hours of television. And to the left of that, we have, I mean, another deployment, which is about maybe 16 panels that will power water pump, it will power microwave oven, deep freezer, refrigerator. This is another deployment here. Down here is another deployment. It's 1 solar panel. Yes, it is closing the gap. This is another one, and I mean, I can tell that this is huge, and it's likely for productive use. And in the center here is a system that Arnergy deployed. And one of the ways that we believe we can close the energy access gap is by democratizing energy and democratizing renewables and solar. People have complained severally that the reason why they have not switched to solar is because it is expensive and all of that. However, I can tell you that this is a 63 kilowatt peak system on the roof of an Arnergy client. For most people that have been following what is happening in Nigeria with COVID-19, 54Gene, they're an healthcare startup, and they partner with NCDC recently to be able to improve on the testing. So 54Gene is Arnergy's customer. On their roof air, this is where most of the testing will be happening. And we powered them since October last year. We own the assets, Arnergy own the assets on this roof, and they just pay us on a monthly basis. So closing that energy access gap that we have today, it is not waiting to expect that Nigerians will buy solar panel outrightly and they will pay, but it is largely going to be finance-based. A mix of, different financing options, and having financial engineering and even consumer loan, SME loan in place to be able to achieve that 9,000 megawatts that we need to see to close the gap. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Femi. Very interesting presentation. You raised a lot of questions. Your message was clear to let us know that we have a daunting goal ahead of us. In 10 years' time, we ought to be able to generate 9,000 megawatts just from renewable alone. And our target overall, the aggregate power generation should be 30 gigawatts. We will now ask, I know there are a lot of questions that are being raised already. I would like to remind our listeners that questions should come through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we will attend to those questions after the next presentation. I will ask my colleague David to now share the slides for the next presenter. and Habiba will take us through her thoughts on this topic that we are discussing. Habiba, are you ready for us? Okay, her slides are coming up.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. It's quite interesting for me to be here. I hope I'm able to excite you and keep you interested through the presentation. The topic is one that has always been, it's something that we're always discussing. It's just in another name. It's about how can we ensure basically that access to energy is improved, is basically used more, we use more of renewables to ensure access to energy. And why would we want to do that? I don't know, I'm having a bit of a problem. Okay, yeah, now that works. So why would we even want to have renewables in the first place? Why are we even having this conversation? And this is one of the reasons why we had wanted my presentation to have come before Femi's, because Femi's own like just ties it up, but I hope that it still makes sense. Access to modern energy is like becoming very, very scarce for Africa. Things are getting better globally, but it's been a huge challenge for us in Africa to access the kind of clean energy that's necessary to ensure sustainable development for the continent. And I talk about the continent in general because I know that there's a lot of people who will be joining the webinar from other countries in Africa. And the problem is actually a very big one, more than we see in Nigeria, actually, if you put the whole continent together. And being a fundamental socio-economic development tool, energy is really key to ensuring poverty eradication, which is one of the biggest plagues of Africa or Nigeria as a whole. Up to 60 to 70% of Nigerian population does not have access to, to reliable energy. I will not say access generally, but access to reliable energy. We all have this. Most of us know these figures, and I'm not going to overburden us with this. And the present crisis is actually one that if we don't quickly, like Femi is trying to explain, Femi was being very nice, but there's the urgency to which we need to persist and ensure that we get the kind of energy resource that's necessary to ensure growth in Nigeria is really, really one that we need to, do very fast. There's great urgency to it. And this is like energy for domestic use, for commercial use, industrial sector, and even especially for me on a personal level or in my business level, the rural communities. So from an economic point of view, having a good, reliable energy resource is really one that renewable energy can actually cover. And it might seem like in the beginning, the expense of implementation and all of that is really high. But if you think about what it costs to actually generate energy in one faraway hydro dam and then transmit it all the way to wherever it's needed, you'll find that in the long run, this is just costs that have been subsidized or hidden somewhere. So what you're paying as the last amount of money is really not representative of all that has gone into it. So looking at what people tend to do now is look at renewable energies, and when you give them a cost, they go like, wow, that's expensive. What I always tell them is that you are like generating, you're transmitting and everything by yourself. So you're like a Kainji dam bringing it to your home. But there are other ways that you can actually make this easier for both the customer and even the person that's the company that's implementing the solution and the government. For example, in some years past, we had the opportunity to use the Clean Development Mechanism, which Nigeria didn't really key into. And I know there are other mechanisms now, like the Green Climate Fund and all of that. So why don't we look at how can we leverage on such financing to ensure that we have patient capital that will ensure renewable energy is deployed as widely as is necessary. And Nigeria can really benefit from a lot of targeted interventions. I know that the Dutch government is doing something for small and medium enterprises to change from They start from even assessments, audits, and all of that to encourage the small and medium enterprises in developing countries through their Dutch Good Growth Fund to revert from using fossil fuels to using renewable resources, especially because of the greenhouse gas emissions. And I mean, if we think about the local air pollution, you'll find that this is really necessary. So much ado about energy, but energy is actually is a huge requirement for our everyday life as to improve as human beings that we are. It leads to economic growth, it leads to productivity. That was close to the industrials. Hello, did you say something?
No, I thought we lost you there. Go ahead.
Okay, I live in a part of town that was the industrial sector of the state, and we had so many factories, but now most of them are gone down. And if you, I know there are other factors that led to us losing most of our factories, the textiles and all of it. But if you really dig deep, you'll find that energy is also one of the real reasons. I'm a member of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, the Kaduna, the Northwest zone. And whenever we have meetings, one of the big things that you hear our companies complaining about is the cost of energy. Companies pay as much as 60%, as much as 60% of their cost is for energy. And renewable energies can actually replace this. So tapping into resources like that one that can access, that I was talking about with the Dutch government, and seeing how to even understand what your energy needs are, what can you reduce? I mean, like an optimization of your energy would really help. And this will help us to exploit the promotion of renewable energy resource, and ensure energy efficiency in small and medium enterprises, as well as application of the energy conservation measures in various sectors, such as in the construction of industrial, residential, and office buildings, like Femi said in a little way earlier. With 1.4 billion people globally having no access to energy, and in Nigeria, about 54% of that, 54% of us are the ones that have the access to the energy. When I say access, that's the people that are connected to the grid. And 50% of the Nigerian population is said, currently, is said to be rural. About 80% of those people do not have access at all. And even where there is access, its reliability and being there is another cup of tea. And so as such, in SOSE, we address rural energy, and we're trying to find solutions that can actually help ensure that the community people do not just end up paying for energy just because, I have a light bulb, I have a television, or I have a better cooking solution. But how else can they also get energy to be a driver for their economic growth as well? And you will find that one of the major problems, if all of us are being very honest with ourselves with doing this regular mini-grid, off-grid mini-grids in rural communities, is that the people cannot afford, if you're doing this solely for the community people, the people cannot afford to pay you regularly. So in the long run, it's a huge investment that is not being returned as it should be. And that's why I think I like the idea of tying it to the key maker model of ensuring there's some productive use is gotten from that, and so that you have a huge maybe factory using most of your energy that you generate in the community, and what you're giving to the community people is less. But one of the major problems I see with the Nigerian, and in fact African energy sector, is people are not willing to pay the right cost for energy. The truth of the matter is energy is not a cheap commodity. It is not a cheap commodity. That's why when we go abroad, you find that these people are generally constantly looking for ways to reduce their energy consumption. People are turning on lights. People are changing their light bulbs, doing everything to be energy efficient. But in Africa, we're just like, we just want to be seeing it regularly. One person will have a mansion and have 8 ACs and want the ACs to be running at the same time. At the end of the month, when NEPA brings the bill and it's say 100,000, the person starts screaming, and they want it to be 20,000. So these are the kind of things that you see, and I think these are solutions that can actually be driven by renewable energies. Imagine that you are the one that sourced your renewable energy and you have it on your roof, and you're the one that's paying, even using the model of paying small, and you wouldn't want to use more than, unnecessarily your energy. So renewable energy also helps to educate people about why renewable energies, why energy should actually be used in an efficient manner. And if you look at it in a global sense, with everybody, every country, every national policy, every strategy now being tagged alongside the Sustainable Development Goals, of all the 17 goals, the energy is like at the epicenter of them. And whatever strategy, whatever design, whatever you want to do, renewable energies is going to be like the, you know, solution to finding, achieving these targets for the Sustainable Development Goals. And renewable energy is able to do this because it's like I said, at the epicenter of finding the right solutions for energy security, ensuring, because up until now, I don't think I've seen another energy resource that is able to give you regular energy, reliable at any time that you want it, if it's well set up, like renewables, that like renewable energy solutions that we have, especially even Nigeria, though we know that 90% of the renewable energy solutions being deployed in Nigeria are solar. Even with just the solar, I mean, in my house, I have constant, and most times I don't even know when power is out in the area because I have energy. So I'm like secure. I have reliable energy. I don't, if I had to be producing something that required energy, I won't have any fears at all, right? And it ensures energy access currently for every community that we have deployed mini grids, or people have deployed mini grids, renewable energy solutions for productive use. It's always there. And with decentralized renewables, like Femi said, we can actually, you know, eliminate a lot of costs while bringing energy very close to the people, to allow them to be able to be the ones that say, well, this is my decision. My energy has been democratized. I have sovereign decision-making powers on what kind of energy I use and how it's going to be used by me. Ensuring that they have social and economic development in the communities, and of course, ultimately, promoting climate change mitigation practices and, you know, reduction of environmental and health impacts. If you look at the fact that I remember when I started my work, and one of the things that scared me even into doing this work was when I heard that for a kerosene lantern to be lit in a room, the people in that room had inhaled, for every 2 hours they were there, they had inhaled an equivalent of 1 pack of cigarette. That really scared me. I grew up with a mother who was a mama put, and we used kerosene lantern when we stayed late in the shop. And I just could imagine how many packs of cigarette I'd smoked. And if anyone had asked me on the street, do you smoke? I go like, no, you know. So even just the health impacts of the indoor air pollution that would have been inherent if we hadn't had renewable energies, it is even already one huge thing. And we know the kind of emissions that generators bring out, and by the time you have this replaced by a good renewable energy solution, you can see that that just generally eliminates any kind of pollution that's going, indoor air pollution for that household totally. And one of the things that kills, one of the major killers of children below the ages of 5 is pneumonia. And pneumonia is caused by the particulate matter in the atmosphere. So imagine the number of generators that we have in this country, generating over 13,000 megawatts of energy from generator in Nigeria alone. And the emissions, if each gallon of petrol is emitting 27.2 tons of CO2 per annum. I mean, imagine the kind of climate effects we're having, and just around your house, the kind of health problems you will have due to the indoor air pollution. No wonder we have indoor air pollution being the third killer of women and children in sub-Saharan Africa after HIV/AIDS and malaria. Of course, I'm not talking about the COVID now, but this was before COVID. So yeah, it's really a very urgent task for us to quickly find, for every aspect of the Sustainable Development Goal, how can we leverage on renewable energies to ensure the development of all issues? The renewable energy can be the major driver for the rural development that we all seek, which is going to reduce, of course, the rural urban migration. It's going to ensure employment for people, for youth and women especially, you know. Like we have a women association called the Martin Ariwan Society Initiative, where women are the ones that are the custodians of the productive use technologies that we have installed in communities. They're the ones that collect the money at the end of the month, offset whatever they owe to SOSE, and also, you know, use whatever it is, share whatever it is that's left off. And I've seen a very huge change in the lives of these women as soon as they are part of this cooperative that manages, let's say, the solar dryer. Immediately, they are part of that. The women are able to make decisions on the kind of schools their children go to. They're able to make decisions on the kind of food the children eat. You know, ordinarily, they wouldn't have this opportunities. And knowing the women from the north who are mostly in Porter, and this allows them to do whatever they want to do inside one of the compounds, and then send one of their boys to just lay it out for them in the dryers. It's really very convenient for them, and it makes them very happy to be, you know, they kind of feel a kind of upliftment in their livelihoods as well. So this is a great one that renewable energy is making happen. And of course, for urban renewal, I mean, look at the estates that Femi showed earlier. I was just like, wow, I wish this was Nigeria. Imagine that every household in that estate had their own generator, their own energy, and didn't have to turn on any generator. I'm sure now a lot of people during this stay at home are like, sometimes you want to run out of your mind just because of the sound of generator that's, you know, when it's evening and people turn on their generators, the sound is like really sending people way out of their minds. And I know we can do it in Nigeria. We can achieve whatever it is we want to achieve within now, because Nigerians are very strong-minded, you know, tenacious people who, if you can afford to buy a 40 kilowatt generator and fuel it for years on end and even change it maybe after 5 years, the renewable energy shouldn't be a problem for you, whether the government is involved or not. As much as the government is trying, we need to, I mean, Nigerians have always been those kind of tenacious people who do not wait for the government to take care of issues for them. They always do. So if we keep that spirit, we can actually achieve. I think it needs a lot of people, everybody coming on board, not just the practitioners, not just the government, even the users need to be, there needs to be some sort of education. And I keep saying that the government needs to educate the populace that energy is not a cheap commodity. Energy is a commodity that needs to be paid for appropriately. Thank you very much. I hope I've made some input here.
Yes, thank you very much, Habiba. You spoke eloquently about the urgency of this goal that we have, which is to hit that 30,000 megawatts through renewable energy. And I like the way you have connected that to not just the sustainable development goals, but also to our socioeconomic development, pardon me, particularly the fact that access to renewable energy also benefits us health-wise. And both you and Femi have talked about the need for the private sector to be involved, to participate in helping us achieve this goal. We're now going to turn to the Q&A session. I'd like to ask my colleague, David, to cede control of the screen back to me as we begin to engage the questions that have come in. We have so many participants globally that are listening to this webinar. The first question here is this: is Nigeria ready for this? We don't seem to have the political will or legislative framework to get this done. Any local effort that you know of? Okay, the question is there any local effort that you know of? I think both presenters have mentioned quite a number of local efforts that are currently ongoing, and they've very, very eloquently identified many of them in their presentation. So I think we can go on to the next question. The next question is from Amayokun Akinradewo. It says, what specific potential projection by geography should investors consider for motivation to key into a large scale in Nigeria? And I'd like to ask Femi to take a stab at that first. So let me read that again. It says, what specific potential projection by geography should investors consider for motivation to key in on a large scale in Nigeria?
All right. So of course, by geography, I reckon Mayokun's question is geography based on where do we have the best installation or the best market. But you then went ahead to mention on a large scale. So if large scale is referring to, if you are referring to maybe rooftop SME focused versus maybe a centralized system, I would say, of course, if you look at the Tier 1 cities, Port Harcourt, Kano, I mean, those are very good locations based on the disposable income and the clusterization of SMEs, commercial and industrial customers. Those are places to look at. But if the question then covers centralized system, of course, if you want centralized system, you want where the best return on investment or the best, the lowest tenor for the return on investment. And that has to go with where you will have the best installation. And of course, Abuja and north of Abuja is where we have the best installation in the country. I hope that answers your question, Mayoko.
Okay, Habiba, do you want to add anything to that?
Hi, I think Femi did justice to it. Really, if you think about, if it's just about the solar irradiation and it's the north, but you know, looking at it, it's not really restrictive because I mean, if people in developed countries who have less solar irradiation or whatever opportunity, the resource to drive their renewables are already doing it in larger scale than we are. I remember one time in 2017, I think in May, Germany ran totally on renewable energies for one full day. I mean, that was like a whole, we made a lot of noise about it, but they've done that severally, you know, after that. So I think geographically, there's really no limitations to whatever it is you can do.
Okay.
Absolutely, I'm with you on that, Habiba.
Okay, the next question is for Femi. It's from Jeffrey. Jeffrey Okafor says, hi Femi, well done on your achievements with arnergy. What are your thoughts on the key ways to increasing the awareness of solar energy in Nigeria?
I think what we're doing now, it's part of ensuring that people get the information and the knowledge of what solar is able to achieve. Right, so I mean, I'm impressed to see more than 140 participants on this webinar. So I think it's part of that. And the association that, REAN, that is leading this with the Energy Training Center. Abiba and I are members of REAN, and REAN has been leading the efforts industry-wise to ensure we get better based on the awareness. I do say that the Minister of Power, I think maybe two administrations before what we have now. I mean, there was an article in the dailies where even the Minister of Power mentioned that, yes, solar is good, but the problem with solar is it can't power heavy appliances like a refrigerator. This was about 6 years ago when, I mean, I just moved back to Nigeria to start arnergy. So then I knew I had a big problem at hand, and that we need to do a lot on awareness. If someone high up there could say that 5-6 years ago. So I think it's a lot better now. Nigerians are aware that solar plus storage could provide them the power. And of course, I believe with the association and all the other private sector players, we will get better on the awareness.
Okay, the next question is for Habiba. What about other renewable energy technologies such as CSP and even hybridizing multiple renewable energy sources?
Well, of course, for every kind of renewable energy source, we have the capacity to take it on in Nigeria, and I don't see any reason why we should limit ourselves. We have the thermal technology. People are already, I mean, I'm looking at so many households even in Kaduna here, with Blue Camel being behind us, bringing in solar hot water systems. There's a lot of them going up on roofs. So there's really no limitations to what you can try. I'm a strong believer in making things happen, and I don't see mountains. I actually look for the valleys or look for a way to break it down. So for whatever resource that we can actually play with, let's try it. When we started the solar dryer, we were very confused as to how it works, what to do. But now we are able, we started with one, and then we've been able to see that there are others out there, and we've been able to even sit down and design a different type with other people. And, you know, so it's all about the will to actually try it. And for me, renewable energies is a whole basket of you know, it's like a Christmas gift that you're opening up, and there's so much opportunities that you can find out inside it. Sorry, what's the second part of that question?
Hybridizing multiple renewable energy sources.
That's also possible. I've seen solutions where people mixed up solar and wind. I mean, okay, like the #1 solar powered building in Nigeria, in Abuja. There was solar, they are using solar water heaters, they are using some sort of wind, they are using of course the solar panels, they have solar carports, solar on the roof. So all of this is like being harnessed and used for, you know, for the house. I think it's an 8 flat, if I'm not mistaken. This was also a Blue Camel champion project. So it will work. It will work.
Okay, great. So this next question is from Anonymous. It says, it's great to see how other nations are building resilience through infrastructural policy. Is there any policy with regards to urban planning that supports such intervention in Nigeria? And if there is, what is our level of compliance as a country? So if Femi can please take a stab at that.
Yeah, I think as a nation, for us, it is not lack of policy. I think where we have lagged, or where we have lagged behind, is on the implementation and the effective execution of policy. So, I mean, I believe we have the grid code and all of that, but are we executing it as we should? I think that's where the question is. However, if you see as much as we will continue to advocate government support, I think it's getting very clear to everyone that for us to be able to achieve anything that's significant, it has to be private sector led. Mm-hmm. And that will be my position on that.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Habiba. I'm sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
I also think that policy-wise, there's been a lot that's been going on in the energy space. If you look at what is, because of this 350 million coming from the World Bank, and with the REA revamping its activities, doing a lot of work, the NERC doing some, upgrade, and everything is seeming to have, I mean, the energy sector in Nigeria is seeming to have life now. I served with NEPA about, I don't know how many years ago, maybe, I don't know how many years ago, but some long years ago, in 2000. And I immediately can just tell the NEPA of now we're trying to do an IMAS system solution. And I walk into NEPA and I'm seeing the difference with the NEPA that we had before and now. So that makes me think that with all the push and the drive to get some policy in place, there's one that we're working on at the REAN level with Heinrich Böll Foundation, with supporting us, and we're trying to push a certain policy with renewable energy policy. And there's another one being also driven by the Environmental Rights Action Friends of the Environment. So there's a lot, but compliance as a country, like you said, is where we might have a problem. But hopefully with many people becoming more aware and energy being the key resource that it is, it will make sure that whatever is set in stone and is, becomes a policy document will actually be implemented well.
Okay. So again, Habiba, this question, well, I'd like to ask you to take this next one. It's from Insakan Akman. Says, please, I want to ask whether the renewable energy industry is seeking to partner with the DISCOs to power some community clusters, okay, making power available even when there is a downtime to the central grid.
That is a very interesting scenario now that's already taking place. SOSA is just as a recent beneficiary of the bid by the Rural Electrification Agency on the REF, Renewable Energy Fund, to work together with Kaduna DISCO and deploy what we call the Integrated Mini Grid Acceleration Scheme program, where there's already like distribution assets in communities. Maybe there's some assets that DISCOs already have that are not working. Some communities that we've been to, there's been poles that have been there for like 15 to 20 years, but no energy has ever come through those poles. I remember one of the communities when we went, we're like, you guys have poles, do you have light? And they said, no, that one is a drying line, drying line for clothes. So yeah, it's happening already. So I mean, just keep your fingers crossed. And I think I like that the REA is driving this process, because it's already making it seem that there's a possibility. Because as soon as we won the IMAS, the thing my head starts thinking of is all of those other communities where we have those drying lines, how we can then work with the DISCOs to actually generate and deploy energy to them.
Thank you. And what I'm hearing our distinguished panelists say here is that there's a lot going on. There are policies in place. We do not lack policies. The challenge we have is the general awareness by Nigerians, and also by those who may want to be a participant in the sector and invest in the sector.
Yeah.
And I think we'll do better. So we have a lot of questions. We'll try to get to some additional questions. We still have a few minutes left. And this next one will be for Femi, and it's something that's also dear to my heart. It relates to local content. And it's from Winner Gotson, who says, are we doing anything now to learn how to develop these renewable energy technologies here in Nigeria?
Very good question. So I think we have to look at where we have competitive advantage. So for us as a company, what we realize that we have competitive advantage on is on the technology side, on the integration side. So for instance, for every of our systems, apart from the solar panel on the roof, every other thing is in a cabinet, enclosed. So that enclosure is made in Nigeria. And we have a system with remote monitoring functionalities. So all the software and the hardware that made the remote monitoring functionalities work were developed. They're all proprietary to Arnergy, and they were developed by Nigerians all under 30. So that's what we say that we have competitive advantage on. Lithium batteries, we don't have competitive advantage on lithium batteries today, not as a company alone, but even as a nation. So we're not there yet to think we want to start manufacturing lithium-ion batteries. It's something that personally, I mean, I have my eyes on, and I mean, there are research going on. However, we want to be sure that what happened with Europeans and even some North American companies do not happen here with solar PV manufacturing companies. We have Oxano, who is a member of REAN, who imports solar cells and then puts those together to make solar modules in Nigeria. So yes, I mean, there are activities on trying to localize as much as possible, but we're not there yet as a nation to be able to manufacture locally end to end, all what is required 100%.
Okay, thank you very much. There's another question here from Dotun, and I think is It's a personal question, but let me read it out anyway. And Femi, feel free to either answer this or not, because the question is for you. It says, how much monthly is your client in Lekki paying, and how long is the contract you have with the client? Is it a flat fee or per kilowatt hour? Femi, do you want to answer that or not?
Fine. So Engineer Dotson is a member of the House. So I think it's public knowledge that for every over 5 kilowatt system, we charge the customer 72,975 monthly. I mean, as a company, we have 2 different acquisition model where customers do not have to pay. One is a lease to own, where customers can pay a fixed price over up to 36 months. It's like a consumer loan or SME loan for a 5 kVA. And for the other one is the energy as a service, and that's what the Lekki client is on. They pay average of 72,975 monthly for every of 5 kVA that they have installed on this.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to ask Habiba to take a stab at this next question. And it is from Kayode Dukoya. It says, how can we get local banks, maybe with involvement of the central bank, to focus some attention of financing renewable energy projects?
Sorry, I forgot I was muted. I think it's already happening. Banks are beginning to see renewable energy sector as an interesting one. I know that FCMB has been trying to court us for a while now. Sterling Bank we've actually started even banking with them based on the fact that they have a very vibrant renewable energy desk. These 2 banks are at the forefront of driving. I mean, I don't know, maybe others are, but they are the ones that I'm always seeing. They are the ones that have actually been quite responsive to renewable energy solutions. And the beauty of it, again, is that they have even gone as far as reducing the interest rates. The last time we were talking with Sterling Bank, they were already talking about giving us a loan at 15%. So, I mean, compare it to the 25% loan that ordinarily you would get for a small business in Nigeria. And they are also willing to have discussions when it comes to term loans. I haven't benefited, but I know a couple of companies that have, a couple of REAN members have actually benefited from Sterling Bank. But as soon as we won this IMAS, I mean, they are one of the people that have gotten an email from saying, oh, how do we support you to make this happen? So I think they are already picking up on it, and not all of the banks, but yeah, some strong ones are working already on it.
Okay, thank you. And this next question.
Let me add to that.
Okay, yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Spots on banks. Like she mentioned, I mean, when we close our Series A round, I mean, for the first time, banks that we've been begging, I got one that even sent us a term sheet by courier.
Okay, good. That's good to know. So this last question for Femi says, what are the pitfalls or barriers to the various financing options Energy offers customers, and how has Energy been able to overcome those barriers?
Sorry about that. Yeah, so beyond just 15% to energy companies, I mean, because maybe some of the banks might be, some of the representatives of the banks might be online, it is very important that they extend the same lower interest rate to the customer. Because at the end of the day, that is what will make the difference. Exactly. Because what I realized is most of even the leading banks that Habiba mentioned, what we realize is when they want to extend to the end customers, they still want them to pay north of 20%. And we've seen a lot of pushback from the end customers on that. So yes, 15% is good, but that has to be extended to the end customer too.
Great. Thank you. We have so many more questions. We cannot attend to all of those questions. What will happen is we'll try and collate all of those questions and try to reach everyone who has sent in those questions. There were a lot of commendations to our panelists from different parts of the globe, commending you for a good job that you are doing. But because of our time, we would have to close now. But in closing, I'd like to ask our panelists to share one final thought to close. So let me start with Habiba, your final thought.
Well, my final thought to close is we shouldn't relent. Renewable energies is still, it looks like it's something that's high up there for people. And if there's anyone in this webinar who feels, oh, it's still too high up, be sure that it's moved. I remember in 2005 when I started this whole renewable energy process, and I had a big fight with the people at ECN, and I was saying, I mean, look at the irradiation in the north. From Kaduna, from Sokoto to Kaduna, you do not see solar panels on the streets, but now you see them and they are working. So I believe that it's not as fast as we wanted it to be, but if we are relentless, you know, the tipping points could actually be just maybe a short period of time, and we're there, and before you know it, it just looks like everyone now has solar energy and or renewable energies, and it's working the way we want it to work. So, and we may actually get to our 9 megawatts that 9,000 megawatts that Femi talked about, which seems like
Okay.
Mirage.
Thank you. Femi, your final thought.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of questions more really. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to take maybe a few more.
Unfortunately, our time is
okay. All right.
limited.
All right, that's fine. So final thoughts. I think we have a big task at hand, really. And because of our history, that we've always set targets, and it seems because, I mean, there is no system in place to always maybe check or make people accountable, which seems to just let it just go by. However, I think we need to continue to get better on the awareness. And like Abiba said, I think I'm positive that we will get better. Can we achieve 9 gigawatts by 2030? I'm not sure. But the good thing is maybe if it's not from PV alone, because I think hydro is part of that, maybe we will get there with the support. But I think I'm encouraged with what is happening. Even with the regulator, from NEC to Rural Electrification Agency, and I hope we will sustain that. And then if we're able to sustain that, I think there might be light at the end of the tunnel.
Great. I'm very sure that this is the beginning of a continuous conversation on this topic. And I hope that we've all learned one or two things from this discussion. I'd like to thank our panelists for their time and knowledge sharing. And I also want to thank our audience, listeners, for participating in this webinar. Our next webinar will be on the topic gas, mini-grids, and distributed renewable energy, the foreseeable future of Nigeria's energy needs. And I'd like for us all to watch out for more information by following our social media handles on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, and that is at ETC_connect, and on LinkedIn, it's at ETC-NG. Our website address is www.etc.ng. And finally, please fill out the feedback forms that you'll be getting through your emails and send back to us. We'd like to hear from you. Thank you and goodbye.
Bye.